Welcome back to the Takeout. As the ceasefire between Israel and Iran remains in effect, Iran's president has enacted a law suspending cooperation with the International Atomic Energy Agency, that is the United Nations nuclear watchdog. Earlier today, I spoke with President Trump's former national security advisor, John Bolton. He was one of four in the first term, about Iran's nuclear capabilities and a lot more. John, it's good to have you with us here on the Takeout. There was a tremendous argument in Washington last week about the assessment of the strikes by the U.S. and Israeli air forces on Iranian nuclear facilities. Separate from that dogfight, what should our audience conclude about the importance of that, the longevity of the damage, and what it might mean for future U.S.-Iran relations?
Well, I think the destruction of the Iranian nuclear weapons program should have been an American goal for quite some time. And that, in fact, we have made the situation worse by waiting 20, 25 years before taking effective action. And I think, indeed, if Israel had not opened the strike on Iranian nuclear and ballistic missile and air defense targets, perhaps Trump wouldn't have been forced into a decision, yes or no, for the U.S. to participate. I think we've done pretty extensive damage. It was absolutely not total and complete obliteration, but neither was it hitting it with a feather. So I think we need to be very careful monitoring, surveilling Iran over the next days to make sure they don't try to restart it and to reserve the option, along with Israel, to use military force again. But to me, the next step, the next logical step to achieve peace and stability in the Middle East is that the regime in Tehran has to go. Because if it doesn't, it will make every effort to rebuild the damage that's been done, whatever it was, to fix that damage in the very near future.
John, as you well know, America First is diametrically opposed to regime change, or at least it says it is.
Well, I think Donald Trump has told us what America First is. It's whatever he says it is. And in the past weeks, he has whispered the words regime change himself and even had his press spokesman in the White House use them. The real question is what is going to bring an end to terrorist surrogates like Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, the Shia militia in Iraq? What's going to bring an end to the nuclear threat that's not just a problem for Israel, it's a problem for the United States. It's the regime in Tehran that's the source of all this. And as long as that regime is there, it's going to cause trouble. And we've seen that now for 45 plus years since the revolution of 1979.
John, does the ability of the Israelis using obvious personnel within Iran who turned on the regime to identify key locations of scientists and military leaders so that they could be killed by the Israelis tell you there is a, let us say, opportune moment to press for regime change? And if we were to do that, what would that look like?
Right. I think this regime is at the weakest it's been since 1979 for a variety of factors. Very quickly, the economy since 2018, 2019 has been a mess. There were widespread protests right across the country, brutally repressed by the regime back in those days. But the economy's only gotten worse since then. It's very, very oppressive for the people, number one. Number two, the young people of the country, 60% of the population is under 30, know they could have a different way of life. They can see it across the Gulf in the Arab states. Three, the ethnic groups, the non-Persian groups that are between 40 and 50% of the population, Azeris, Kurds, Baluchis, Arabs, very opposed to the Ayatollahs. And then finally, people will remember the murder of Mahsa Amini 2 years ago, a young Kurdish woman who refused to wear the hijab, and the protests that came as a result of that, challenging the legitimacy of the Ayatollahs, who say they convey the word of God to the people about how they're supposed to behave. And the women of Iran said, we don't hear the word of God telling us we have to wear the hijab. There's a lot of division within top ruling circles in the country. They're going to face a crisis when the Ayatollah Khamenei, who's 86 years old, been in power 36 years, very poor health, when he goes, that is the kind of stress on the regime that could cause the thing to come apart at the top and collapse.
John, on another topic, the administration has decided to withhold some armament shipments to Ukraine. Your reaction?
I think this is a mistake. I hope there'll be a strong reaction in Congress when they get the reconciliation bill out of the way. These are resources previously committed. The argument appears to be that if we provide some of these assets to Ukraine, we will not have sufficient reserves in our arsenal to protect the United States. I doubt that. I'd like to see the proof of that. Even if it were true, using these weapons, giving them to the Ukrainians to use against the Russians benefits the United States. I feel very strongly on that point. And it's an argument that we need significant increases in our defense budget, which the White House has not asked for in the next fiscal year request. This is the worst time to show any sign of weakness to Putin as the Russians are preparing apparently another offensive against Ukraine and its northwest.
You mentioned Congress. John, as you well know, there is a sanctions bill in the United States Senate that Lindsey Graham, its chief sponsor, says has 82 members of the Senate on it. All they're waiting for is a green light from President Trump. Will that ever come?
Well, I think it hasn't come yet. Obviously, I think it could come. I don't think Trump likes to be insulted and demeaned. He still thinks, I'm afraid, Vladimir Putin is his friend, which is a mistake on his part. But I think he's trying to avoid it, but he may not be able to. Look, in the first term, we would go to him and say, we think sanctions are necessary on Russia. He'd resist mightily, and then he'd go ahead and impose the sanctions and take credit for it. I'd be happy if that's the way it turned out here.
Always a pleasure, John. Thanks for your time.
Glad to be with you.